Now, the world of Zelda is a strange place. There are odd creatures everywhere, ancient artifacts, and of course, technology. Now, for a long time, the tech we saw in the Zelda games was quite basic to say the least. You know, stuff like buttons, trapdoors, and at best a primitive robot. However, in Breath of the Wild, all of this changed. In this game, we all of a sudden encountered a bunch of insane robots, all of which are more advanced than any of the others we had seen before up until that point, with one type of robot being the king out of all of them. The gigantic divine beasts that were made for one goal, destroying the most evil being in the Zelda universe. And after seeing them in action in games like Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, I started thinking about something. Which divine beast is the strongest out of all of them? Which one rules at the end of the day? Well, today we will find out. So, let's dive right in. Now, all of this started a very long time ago, 10,000 years to be exact. The Sheikah built the elephant Ruta, the salamander Radunya, the eagle Vametto, and the camel Vaboris. And they made them in order to combat Calamity Ganon, who was going to return. The one evil that wants to conquer the world. Now they are piloted by 4 champions from across the land, and they paved the way for victory against Ganon. But shortly after this, the king of Hyrule at the time, gripped with fear due to the awesome firepower that these technologies possessed, had all further research and development abolished. And so the divine beasts were buried beneath the ground, and their existence passed on into legend. But then, over 100 years ago, due to the rising fears of the return of Calamity Ganon, the royal family of Hyrule ordered the divine beasts to be unearthed and readied for another battle because of a fortune teller's prophecy. It took several years, but all 4 of these machines were found after intensive searching. Now in the end, their mission failed when Ganon, now aware of the threat that the divine beasts posed to him, sent the 4 Blight Ganons to control each beast. Now in the end, Ganon took control of all of them and used them together with the Guardians to destroy Hyrule. In the end, Zelda was able to seal him away, however, but only for a limited amount of time. And so, shortly before Link woke up, Ganon began to use the beasts once again, which was possible because Zelda's power was fading. And so he used them to bring more terror to Hyrule once again. Rita caused an unending rain on Zora's domain that threatened to flood all of Hyrule, Radunya caused Death Mountain to erupt endlessly, Vametto prevented the Rito from soaring at their preferred altitude, and the Vaboris caused an unending sandstorm, complete with risk of deadly lightning in the Gerudo Desert. And so in the game, you need to free these mighty machines from the influences of Calamity Ganon. And now that we have an idea of what their history is and their role in the story, we can look at each one of them to find out which one is king. Now, I will mention, the Master Cycle Zero is also labeled as a divine beast, but we won't cover it in this video at all, because it would probably end at the bottom. Now let's dive right in by looking at the weakest one of them all, Varuta, the divine beast of the Zora. Now it resembles an elephant and its main element is water. Its trunk is opposable and can spew an infinite amount of water, and it can even spray this water into its interior to make a large water wheel turn, allowing access to the upper sections of the divine beast. Aside from that, Ruta is also capable of using the rune Cryonis to protect itself, which means it can shoot ice at anyone that tries to attack. Aside from that, it can of course shoot a huge laser. But all of them can do that, so I won't mention that anymore from now on. Now, while this divine beast is still really strong, because it can shoot huge ice balls, shoot gigantic lasers, and can create infinite water, it's not as good compared to the others. Sure, it's pretty cool and all, and can be useful at times, but compared to all the others, it's just not that good. You got to remember that this gigantic beast will have a really hard time getting around, more so than a lot of the others. Aside from that, the power of water and ice is not that useful. Sure, it can still deal a lot of damage like we see in Age of Calamity, but at the end of the day, this is certainly the most limited element out of all of them. And because of that, it ends up at the bottom. Now on to the next one, our number 3. And on this spot, I put Radunya, the divine beast that resembles a salamander. Now this one uses the element of fire and has 4 compartments near each of its legs that store guardian sentries as well. well. Now the cool thing about this one is its movement options, because Radunya can climb vertically like an actual salamander, and doing so rotates the interior of the Divine Beast by 90 degrees. This already gives it a lot more movement options, especially in tough terrain, which can't be said about Varuta. Aside from that, this one has a lot of powerful fire abilities like lava bombs and magma rain, all of which is seen in Age of Calamity. And because of those stronger powers and better movement options, it would certainly be more effective than Varuta. Stuff like lava can basically burn through anything and deal massive damage, which can't always be said about ice and water. So clearly it has quite a big advantage over the previous Divine Beast we talked about. But he isn't the strongest. Oh no. Because our number 2 has some advantages that certainly make it a lot stronger and harder to defeat. Now the Divine Beast that ends up here is Vaboris, which resembles a camel, and that also has some advantages. It's incredibly tall because of that, which really helps in keeping enemies at bay and getting past obstacles. Although I will say that Radunya is probably more mobile. Now this Divine Beast has electricity as its element, with the humps being powerful lightning generators, which it can also use to protect itself, and that's the second thing that makes it so strong. At all times there's some sort of electrical field around this Divine Beast, and once in a while it discharges and shocks anyone near it. This is an incredibly effective way of protecting itself. It's a lot more effective than what the previous two did with their water and fire attacks. Now the inside of the Divine Beast is split into 3 cylinders, each of which can rotate a full 360 degrees. And in combat, this Divine Beast also uses a lot of attacks and moves based on electricity. And that kind of attack is one of the most effective types, just like the lava and fire attacks of Radunya. To be honest, the only thing that could save you from this gigantic beast is the rubber suit seen in Breath of the Wild. However, no one has something like that, and so its attacks are very effective, no matter the enemy or location. So in general, it has good defensive strategies, is high up and therefore hard to reach, and its attacks deal massive damage to anyone. However, while all of that is great and really good, there is one other Divine Beast that is by far the best. The Divine Beast Vametto, our number 1. Now this one resembles an eagle and actually flies around instead of walking around like all the others. This already gives it a huge advantage because all the ground enemies can't get to it, and it's even out of range for most weapons like bows. Now it uses the element of wind, and to protect itself it uses a force field maintained by 4 generators. And that is another big advantage. All of them have defenses, but this is the only one with some sort of active shield. The others rely on attacking as a way to defend. Aside from that, it can also attack by shooting lasers down at enemies, as well as carpet bomb certain areas. So to be honest, it's really powerful. And that's all because it can bombard enemies from a distance, lowering risk and increasing effectiveness because it will be harder to hide from the Divine Beast. Aside from that, the flying would also help with travel. We all know that flying is one of the fastest ways of transportation out there. So clearly all of this gives it an edge in terms of travel speed, defensive and offensive capabilities, and more. But there's one other huge benefit to this Divine Beast. It's in a lot of ways similar to an aircraft carrier. On top there's a huge deck with loads of space for troops, and that can be used to your advantage. One tactic that the Rito could deploy with their Divine Beast that others couldn't really do, at least not as effective, is a paratrooper attack. They could load the deck with tons of Rito warriors and even others like Hylian knights, and at that point they can fly towards their goal. When they arrive there, they start by bombing any enemy forces or structures in sight, giving the troops a better chance in the upcoming battle. And once that has been done, you can unleash your forces who will fly down either using their wings or a paraglider like the one Link uses. That way you can attack certain areas really fast, using both troops and the Divine Beast at the same time. Sure, you can do the same with the others, but a lot of them have less space for troops and can't be deployed as fast. And so because of that, I think that Vametto is the best Divine Beast out of all of them. Now if you disagree, then let me know down below and tell me why. And don't get me wrong, I still believe all the Divine Beasts are strong, and some could even counter others very well. But personally, I think Vametto is the strongest of all. And don't forget before leaving this video to leave a like, subscribe, and click that bell button, so you won't miss any future videos.